Welcome, Catholicos, Catholics, Orthodox Christians, all who seek the truth. Last week or so, or a bit more, there was a big brouhaha online about what Cardinal Maria Vigano said in regards to Benedict XVI and whether his abdication was even valid. I will give you and big YouTube Catholic channels like Dr. Taylor Marshall and Return to Tradition and others commented on this announcement of Vigano asking for an official investigation on the abdication of Benedict and on the conclave which elected Francis, whether there was any fraud or not. I will just read you a little quote so you know where we stand, and that was on, as I said, on Aldo Maria Valli's website on his Italian language blog, and this is what Vigano had to say. Certain popes, let us not forget, are granted, others are inflicted, but before discussing the next conclave, it is necessary to shed light on the abdication of Benedict XVI and on the question of the frauds of the 2013 conclave, which sooner or later will have to give rise to an official investigation. If there were to be proofs of irregularity, the conclave would be null, the election of Bergoglio null, and just as all his appointments, acts of government, and magisterium would be null. Your reset would providentially bring us back to the status quo ante, which with a college of cardinals composed only of the cardinals appointed up to Benedict XVI, ousting all those created since 2013, notoriously ultra-liberal. And then he continues, he says, certainly the current situation with all the rumors about Ratzinger's, meaning Benedict XVI, resignation and Bergoglio's election does not help the ecclesial body and creates confusion and disorientation in the faithful. And that was on, as I said, on Aldo Maria Valli's website. And oops, what did I do? Close this here. Move my face back to where it belongs. Here we go. All right, so that was the thing. And recently, Patrick Coffin, if you know who he is, he actually did an interview with Cardinal Burke regarding that very question maybe a year or two ago. And now basically he came out officially and declared himself to be a believer that Benedict XVI is indeed still the real Pope. Now, before we go, because people, I dealt with this. Here's my channel, as you know, and I put, I kind of put a whole bunch of videos in a row, so people who are interested in this matter can investigate it further if they desire. So this is the section, is Benedict Pope? So there was one video which with Benedict himself saying, I'm ontologically Pope. I'm a Pope like a father is always a father. He cannot be not a father anymore. And that he resigned only the managerial part of the papacy, like a father would resign the managerial part of say running the family business and hand it on to his son, but he's still the father. Of course, that's not possible. A pope is not. You cannot be ontologically in an office. Anyways, so I have a whole bunch of videos. I'm going to do little clips of them right now, and I encourage you, if you're interested in this subject, to go over them. And just before we do that, with Vigano's saying that all the cardinals are null, all the things are null, well, we have to remember that every single time that, I'm going to show you here, every single time that Francis appoints cardinals, what does he do? Here's what he does. If
you actually go into any bookstore in Israel and ask for the New Testament in Hebrew, they go...
Here we go, skip it. So we can see that every single time, I'm going to put this sentence here.
One by one, they greeted him personally and with much affection. Some, like the Archbishop of Rabat, even joked with him.
Su predecesor vino a Marruecos. Su sucesor también. Usted tiene que venir.
So, anyways, as you can see, every single time Francis appointed cardinals, he brings them over to Pope Benedict. Why? And they always greet him. So, assuming for argument's sake, he is still the vicar of Christ, but Francis is the Bishop of Rome, splitting the papacy as apparently Benedict desired to do, and to make it into a collegial office, an expanded office. As Gonswein, his personal secretary, stated in 2016, which of course is impossible because this is the divine constitution of the church and no pope can alter the divine constitution of the church. But in any case, if we assume this is the power, this has truly happened, so let's assume his resignation is invalid. So he's still pope, but he appointed basically Bergoglio, Francis. Basically, Benedict approves all his appointments. So all the cardinals appointed by Francis are approved by, if we assume still, Pope Benedict. So in this case, I disagree with Vigano that all his cardinals are null and void because Benedict approves them and blesses them, gives them the apostolic. In that video, you'll see them actually simultaneous apostolic blessings of the cardinals. I mean, anyways, so, but that's what started it. That's what the trigger of this latest brouhaha is. So where is the section on what happened? Oh, here it is. So let's go back to the beginning of it. So as you can tell, you got there was the Pope Benedict's interview here with his Peter Seewald, and that's based upon that. And then there's the Father Z from his blog talks about the question of two popes. On Patrick Coffin's YouTube channel before it was deleted or removed, he had an interview with Cardinal Burke who comments about the irregularities. I don't know if he talks about the irregularities about the conclave, but actually about the abdication, and especially what bothered him most was the Gonswein's speech in 2016 regarding the expanded office of Peter, which apparently Benedict ushered in with a contemplative and an active member of that one single office. And he said these are very disturbing comments, which, and then Cardinal Mueller I have a video on Cardinal Mueller about the question of two popes as well. And then Nicola Bux. And if you don't know who Nicola Bux is, he was basically one of the most, he's a personal friend of, I'm going to read you off his Wikipedia page, which is basically as a close collaborator of Benedict XVI during his pontificate. He was consultant to the Congregation for Divine Worship and the Discipline of the Sacraments up to 2018, and of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith up to 2013, and the Congregation for the Causes of Saints up to 2019, and the Office of Liturgical Celebrations of the Supreme Pontiff up to 2013. He was also he was collaborated with John Paul II, Benedict XVI, even Francis. So anyways, these are the and he's like, you can just go look at his qualifications. He's, it's not some guy, doing a little thing. So he's actually one of the first to actually say, because there's this big interview, and I did the whole video. It's like, how long is that thing? It's almost 2 hours, an hour and 50 minutes. And in it, he talks about, because they're asking him about the question of all these errors being spread in the church and what to do and so forth, and the question of a heretical pope, and pope fall into heresy, and what is a manifest pertinacious heretic, pope or bishop or whatever, would he fall automatically from office? And his answer is yes, ipso facto, a pope would fall from the pontificate for the manifest, pertinacious sin of heresy. But again, he says it's very hard to determine what heresy is because these days, because of a lot of the vagueness being used. So it's very hard to pin down somebody and call him a manifest heretic until he, So that's so he says about Benedict about Francis. He says, and Benedict XVI, that's like 2 years ago or more than that. He says, and that's, remember who he is, a personal friend of Benedict, very high ranking in the Vatican and all these congregations. He says, we need an investigation into the validity of the renunciation of Benedict XVI. So that's 2 years or more before, actually maybe 3 years before I uploaded it 2 years ago. So it might have been even long previous to that, because I did record it at a different time. So it's like 2 to 3 years ago he said that. So I'm going to play you just this section, and then if you're interested, I'm going to put this so you can make sure it's we're listening to the same thing here. So let's see here. Pope and these errors being propagated in Rome, and these errors being propagated by Francis. Instead of having to worry about how we're going to deal with him, how can he be deposed, how can he be exposed, did he fall from the papacy or not, let's examine first the juridical validity of Pope Benedict XVI's renunciation, whether it was even valid. Because even Cardinal Monsignor Gonswine, Pope Benedict XVI's representative, said in 2016 that Benedict wanted to have almost a collegial papacy. He expanded the Petrine office into a contemplative and an active. And actually, Gonswine said that Pope Benedict did not abandon the office, and I'm using his exact words. He did not abandon the office of Peter, but expanded it. So he says something which was impossible for Benedict to do. And Benedict himself in his address, I have this on Cardinal Burke, asks if Pope Francis is the Pope. I have this video, and I quote several of these things. Pope Francis Benedict himself says, look, I'm abandoning the active exercise of the ministry, not the office. I'm abandoning I have given up the power for governance of the church, but not the office. He didn't say the office at all. And he still wears white. He's still called His Holiness. He still gives his apostolic blessing, which is reserved only for the Pope. He's still called Pope. So a lot of confusion, to say the least. So that's why basically Nicola Bux says, look, maybe it's a better thing to examine whether this renunciation of Benedict was even valid in the first place, because you can't resign halfway. It's either you totally resign the office, the munus, or you didn't. If you just resigned the ministerium, the ministry, and retained the office, you haven't resigned the office. You haven't resigned the papacy. Therefore, Francis is not the Pope. He might be considered a bishop, maybe an assigned Pope that helps out Benedict, but there can only be one Pope, one true Pope. So that's why he says that. And before I finish up the article, it's pretty much done. And here there's the one Pope, one active, one contemplative. There were lots of problems. And there was a theologian, a canon lawyer. Yeah, this one is about Father Stefano Violi, which is in 2013 or 2014 wrote an article. And I do mention it in other videos, and I actually highlight the article so you can see. Basically about 12 pages or more of a discussion about the papacy and the renunciations of the popes and so forth. And in it he says, his conclusion is basically, yes, Benedict resigned, but he limited his renunciation only to the active part of the office. He did not leave the office, but left the ministry. And he's a professor of canon law, and at Familia Romana or something like that in Lugano. As I said, I've got Nicola Bux there, sir, in like 2 to 3 years ago, said the exact same thing. He said, did Benedict do halfway resignation, like partial resignation? Did he try to split the office? If that's the case, then this should be examined and should be studied. We need an answer to this, whether it is, did he resign partially or fully? What is the story? Because if he tried to resign partially, then that renders his renunciation null and void. Anyway, so it's not a big amazing thing that Vigano's just mentioned it now, because it's been mentioned previously. But I encourage you to watch all of them, what Benedict himself says, his last audience, Gonswine speak, Violi's analysis, Father Z's ideas, the questions with Cardinal Burke, Cardinal Mueller, his discussion of the matter. And I have here, again, you see Pope Francis writing to Pope Benedict a letter, and you see kind of almost the sonship to the superior. And then there I have some videos here on the actual election, because again, that was another question of Vigano about the election. Was there frauds, no frauds? And this story of the election was actually brought up by, which I can have a little review of, I think, where is it here? Secret of Benedict of Antonio Socci, because there was a question about an extra ballot was used. I think I can't remember, the law was, I think only 4 ballots per day were allowed, and they used 5. So they violated the laws of the Conclave, which would render it null. But in any case, if you look at the voting pattern, Francis would have been elected whether it was on the second, whatever it was, the day of, or the next day, because he was gaining and gaining and gaining. So one day of false balloting might not have made any difference in the long run. But anyways, and I have a very short review kind of on one chapter of the Keys of this Blood, shows you the involvement of the British government in the election of Francis and the election of Pope Francis. It's a review of a book. And again, it delves deep into what happened during the election, written by his, Pope Francis worshipper. So it's not an anti-Francis book, but it's actually a very pro-Francis book. So these are some of the videos I've dealt with the subject quite deeply, and I don't think there's much more to say about it. So there's Gonswine's speech, Benedict's last audience speech, Stefano Violi's canonical analysis, Cardinal Burke mentions it. Father Z talks about the vision of Fatima and how the children in the part which was released, the release in the year 2000, they seem kind of what they thought was a pope, but it's like kind of in a mirror. So Father Z says, in a mirror, you see kind of the opposite, like the reverse in a mirror of your image, of the real person, kind of like a pope and an anti-pope, like a reverse image. And the children didn't know it was a pope, but he looked like it seemed to them in a kind of a mirror, so this is his, and he talks about that. Anyways, so there's lots of stuff to think about, and honestly, we don't really, nobody can say 100% anything, but the evidence would give one a lot of questions, let's put it that way. All right, so if you're interested in that subject, and if you're not interested just in like a 2-word sentence of Vigano said, let's do an investigation. Whoa, big deal. But why? Why? Where is that coming from? So I've got a whole series of videos, and the newer ones I have actually the document on the screen, so you can follow along, or you can find the document yourself and read it yourself. All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, that's the video for today. So yeah, here it is. Is Benedict still Pope? Or as some people were saying, oh, well, he wanted to make himself maintain the vicarship of Christ, but give the papacy or the government to somebody else. Anyways, it's a big confusion. That's kind of like, too smart for your own good, too smart for the good of the church. Anyway, so yeah, he still dresses in white, calls himself Pope, and actually Gonswine tells you why. And I quote it in full, and I think in the first video here, the Benedict ontologically Pope, in his speech, and I quote that speech several times in different areas, because Gonswine says, he says, Benedict did not abandon the office of Peter. No, he expanded it. He made it bigger. He expanded the office into a contemplative and a ministerial. And the Pope, so he didn't abandon the office of Peter, something which was impossible for Benedict to do. And even Benedict says his resignation, his decision to renounce, did not alter his what he received in 2005, which was what? The office of Peter. This is in his last speech. And that's why Gonswine says, that is why he still wears white. That is why he is still called holiness. That is why he still resides in the Vatican. This is in his speech in 2016. So if people are still wondering, why is he still wearing white? Well, read Gonswine, his personal secretary, who still is his personal secretary. Anyways, that's all I'm going to say about the subject. Doesn't really affect us one way or the other. All we have to do is keep the faith once for all delivered to the saints, as it is in the catechisms and in the teachings of the church for 2,000 years. And go to the ancient liturgy if possible, or the new mass. Find a good reverent one if no other options are available. And, live a holy life and die a happy death. And that's all it is. And that's all. What else can we do? We can think about these things. We can discuss them. We can ask for an investigation, as Vigano is asking. And if that one comes, that will be amazing. And we can hope for a miracle if both Benedict and Francis die virtually on the same close to the same time. Then we have a conclave where there's no discussion of who's left, who's the real pope, who's not the real pope. Is there going to be another anti-pope? Well, we don't care about that. Let them both die at the same time. I'm being kind of blunt here, or very close to the same time. And then we have the undisputed Bishop of Rome, who is as well the Vicar of Christ. That's it. That's all. Hope you like this video. Please like, subscribe, and share. And I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.